Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us to learn about the federally funded Illinois Emergency Homeowner Assistance Fund. I'm Lauren Underwood, and I have the honor of representing Illinois' 14th Congressional District. My focus in Congress has been helping our community recover from the pandemic by creating jobs and getting people back to work, lowering costs for you and your family, and delivering millions in federal funding for essential projects across our district, like rebuilding our infrastructure. And so far, we've done just that. Our economy has experienced record growth. In 2021, 6.6 million jobs were created. We've restored all jobs lost during the pandemic, and more people are working full-time now than pre-pandemic. Our economy created 678,000 jobs in February, and unemployment decreased to 3.8%, even as more people join the labor force. That follows the greatest year of job growth in American history and the fastest economic growth in nearly 40 years. But despite the successes we've had as a country, we know that some of our hardest hit neighborhoods and our neighbors and our friends are still on the road to recovery. That's why I'm so glad to join you this afternoon to learn helpful information about the Illinois Emergency Homeowner Assistance Fund and how it can help your family and community. We know the pandemic affected every aspect of people's lives, from healthcare to education to employment. And that's why I supported and celebrated the passage of the American Rescue Plan last March, which was designed by Congress to bring relief to people across the country and fuel our economy. The American Rescue Plan continues to deliver for our communities and those who were hit hardest by the pandemic. The Illinois Homeowner Assistance Fund, which you will hear more about today, will provide assistance to those who struggled with their mortgage payments. Over these past 2 years, Illinois renters and homeowners have faced significant challenges. A year ago, 39.9% of Illinois households reported falling behind on their mortgage payment, the second highest number in the country. Now, the Illinois Homeowner Assistance Fund is inviting households who've experienced financial stress during the pandemic to apply for up to $30,000 in free assistance. This $30,000 will help them pay past due mortgage payments, property taxes, property insurance, and any delinquent homeowner or condo association fees. We all know how critical homeownership is to the vitality and well-being of our communities. With the incredible work that the Neighbor Project is already doing to help put working families on a path to stable and secure home ownership, I am thankful that we can work together to continue driving this mission forward with the help of the Homeowners Assistance Fund. Today, our speaker is Rick Guzman, Executive Director of the Neighbor Project, and he'll provide some important information on the Homeowner Assistance Fund that you all may use to continue to support the people and families you work with. He'll also be walking you through the application process and answering some FAQs. Although the program that we're going to talk about today is funded through federal dollars, it's being implemented by the Illinois Housing Development Authority. That means that your state representative and your state senator will provide critical oversight of the program. Please keep in mind that my office is here to serve you. You can reach us anytime at 630-549-2190 or at underwood.house.gov if you or anyone you know who lives in our congressional districts are having a problem with the federal agency and you want to know if our office can help. Now I'll turn it over to Jessica Beeshold, who's the Outreach Director based in my district office. Jessica is going to introduce our speaker and will moderate the rest of the discussion this afternoon. Over to you, Jessica.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. Now it is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Rick Guzman, who is the Executive Director of the Neighbor Project. Hey, Rick.
Good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon. The Neighbor Project is a nonprofit HUD-certified housing counseling agency, and they're dedicated to helping low to moderate income families reduce debt, build credit, save, and ultimately buy their first homes. So Rick, we're so happy to have you joining us this afternoon for this discussion. I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself, talk about your organization, and then we can get into your presentation about the ILHAF program.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jessica. And thank you, Congresswoman Underwood. I think it's worth pointing out here that this is a program that just simply wouldn't exist. The access to this much needed assistance, which we're starting to see more and more. A lot of people had some options early on in the pandemic, but a lot of those options are running out, and people are still, in some cases, in some places, certainly struggling. And if it were not for the American Rescue Plan, these funds just wouldn't be available. And in fact, we haven't had funds available for people to apply for in Illinois since earlier in the pandemic, when the CARES Act provided funding in 2020. So we helped people back then, but really for most of 2021, there wasn't the assistance. It had been passed, but it is just rolling out now nationwide. It's a program that's available nationally, and we're excited to be an official partner of the Illinois Housing Development Authority. But again, want to just sort of thank the Congresswoman for supporting the American Rescue Plan that provided the dollars that made this program possible in the first place. So we're real appreciative of that. The Neighbor Project, as was mentioned, homeownership is a big deal to us. We work with people really most often to help them become first-time homeowners. But one of the other things that we've done, and unfortunately are having to increase doing again, is to help people avoid foreclosure and to stay homeowners. A big part of increasing the homeownership rate has to do with also being able to maintain that. And so I'm going to share my screen and walk through a couple of things that we do, but also get into some specifics about the Illinois Homeowner Assistance Fund. So it takes me, I think, just a minute to go through here and to get this available to you. But while I do that, I want to just sort of mention that the Neighbor Project has a variety of services that are available, and we want to make sure that you know about those that are not just related to foreclosure. And so I just want to double check here, Jessica, is my screen on for people?
Yes, your screen is on.
Okay, so real quick here. One of the things we offer is called the Financial Empowerment Center, and that's really working with people on their overall financial health and stability that can help them stay in their homes, whether they're renters or homeowners, by helping them to get access to free and better banking services, to increase their credit, to reduce their debt, and to save. But we also, as I mentioned, help people prepare for homeownership, help people avoid foreclosure. And then we also have a number of unique programs that help people to save towards becoming more financially stable, whether their goals are to access college or higher education, job training programs, or most often homeownership. We have a number of programs that help in this area too. The final thing I want to mention here too, because it's related, is while you can't apply for needed home repairs or urgent home repairs, which are often, also an issue that force people out of their homes when they can't keep up with, maybe being able to afford a new roof that's needed or a furnace. We do have access to to funding for that, particularly if you live within the city of Aurora city limits. We do have had access to dollars that the current round is spent, but we'll be getting new dollars for those kinds of home repairs as well. So contact us and you'll get our contact information later if you're also needing help with home repairs, like a new roof, a furnace, or plumbing or electrical, things that may be difficult to afford on your own. As I go through this, I'm going to move somewhat quickly. But I wanted to start with a couple of definitions here, just so that people are aware. When we talk about the lender, that's oftentimes a bank or financial institution that lends the dollars, but sometimes the servicer is different. That's where you get your monthly mortgage statement from. And so you're going to maybe hear me use those terms interchangeably because they are often interchangeable, but not always. The borrower is oftentimes, probably the person who's listening here, but co-borrower is also an important thing to keep in mind. Anybody else who is helped to guarantee the payments for this may need to sign off on your application. So just keep that in mind as we go through. As has been mentioned, there are a lot of things that can be covered. The main things are oftentimes built into just one payment that you have. So the principal that you're paying down the amount of the loan that you borrowed, the interest that is part of every monthly payment usually includes those. And oftentimes your property taxes and your insurance, and in many cases, your HOA dues as well, can all be bundled into one payment. And the Illinois Homeowner Assistance Fund can help with all of those things. You'll hear the term delinquency. That means that it is over 30 days past due. And then there's sometimes you'll see there'll be questions about any other liens on your property, like a home equity loan or a second mortgage that you've taken out. Those are things that we'll need documentation about as well. But there's also things that if you're behind on those repayments that this program can help with also. One other big term that is kind of a large piece of this is loss mitigation, which doesn't mean a lot to many of us thinking about this, but one of the requirements of this that Congress set up is that this program is really designed to be a last resort, right? So many banks, lenders, mortgage servicers are offering ways for people to be able to stay in their homes or to get temporary relief. And you need to be able to show that you've explored those options. One of the ways to do that is to actually contact your mortgage servicer directly and talk about what those options are. Another way is to contact an organization like the Neighbor Project, and you'll see our contact information here shortly. But if you come to us, we can help you explore those and help you get in touch with your mortgage servicer so that we can demonstrate that you've met this part of the criteria. You can't complete an application until you show that you have documentation either from us or one of the other state partners, or from your mortgage servicer showing that you've explored the different options. Now, most of those options are geared towards keeping you in your home, and we'll talk about those in a second. But some of those options are also things like a short sale or pre-foreclosure, or where you just turn over the house. That avoids the permanent or the 7-year foreclosure record that may be on your credit. So these are the kinds of things that you need to be able to show that you've explored. The reason I wanted to put this up there, these are all options that again are available to people. Some of them are temporary, some of them are long-term. But there is a difference here. The first one is forbearance. This is where you reach out to your bank and they say, okay, you're having difficulty. We can pause your payments temporarily, sometimes for 3 months at a time, and sometimes it can go up to a year. But then you have to start making those payments again. And oftentimes at the end, what they'll do is the second thing is they'll actually defer that amount all the way till the end of your mortgage. Now, it's important here to pause, because if you are currently in forbearance, where you've had a pause on your payments, that does qualify you as being behind. You have to be behind on your mortgage to qualify for this program. And if you're currently taking part of a forbearance, you are behind. You're not making current payments. You're able to qualify for this, and it can actually pay for all of the amount you're behind, up to $30,000. If, however, you've finished a forbearance and you are caught back up, and that amount has been deferred to the end of your mortgage, so you don't actually pay it back until 15 or 20 years whenever you finish paying your first mortgage. Unless you are behind on your mortgage again, you're not eligible for this program. And so this is a little bit of a tricky situation for some people who find themselves in. But again, the main thing is this program is designed for people who are currently behind and haven't been able to take advantage of something like the second thing here. Okay, the rest of these are going to go a little bit faster. Foreclosure, again, this is what we're trying to avoid, because it's going to result in not only you losing your home, being evicted from it, losing any equity that you've invested in it. It will hurt your credit, and it will make it harder to get a new home. And so that's why we want to avoid that. And that's what this program is really here for. In Illinois, your bank or your lender would have to file a lawsuit to force the sale of your home. And that does take some time, and it gives us an opportunity to be able to help with particularly when we have a program like this. The big thing I wanted to bold for you here is that foreclosure can be stopped even if it's already been filed, but reach out to us right away, particularly if you've already had a foreclosure action filed against you. We can help. That's, again, a big part of what this program is here for. But if that's the case, we need to move as quickly as possible. So Here are a few more slides here on the Illinois Homeowner Assistance Fund. First of all, the program, as has been mentioned, was funded through the American Rescue Plan. It's being offered through the Illinois Housing Development Authority, and a good number, I think it's somewhere between 50 and 75 organizations like the Neighbor Project in different geographies throughout the state that are here to help you with the application, which can be a little bit daunting for some people. So we're here to help. The program, as has been mentioned, offers up to $30,000 of assistance, and it can help with any of the things listed here: your mortgage, your property taxes, a second or third mortgage if you're behind on that, property insurance, association fees, and if you're in a mobile home, it can also help with the lot rent. There are a number of eligibility factors here. And we'll talk about some of these as we go. But quickly, the main thing is you have to be able to demonstrate that there's been some COVID pandemic related hardship. And when I say demonstrate, actually what they're requiring is for you to sign off on saying that you have suffered a hardship. And that's any time over the past the past 2 years, going back to January of 2020. And it could be things such as maybe having COVID and missing work and missing pay. It could be if you were temporarily laid off and got behind on your bills, or even if you just had a reduction in pay or reduction in hours. There's a variety of things that can help you pay for this. Maybe you had increased costs with childcare, so you could keep working. All of those things would qualify, and you have to just sign off that you have been negatively impacted by the pandemic. As I mentioned, you must be at least 1 month, 30 days delinquent on your mortgage. If you're caught up on your mortgage, this program wasn't really designed for you. As you can see here, the one exception for that is for people who actually have paid off their mortgage and don't have a mortgage, but have fallen behind on their property taxes. Because if you're behind on your taxes, you can also lose your home as a result of a tax sale, and that's something we're trying to avoid here too. So if you have those paid off, but you're behind on taxes, this is also a program that can help. There's also this requirement to show that your monthly income, that your mortgage is not more than 42% of your monthly income. This is a different calculation than what the lender would have done initially. It doesn't factor any of your other debt into it. It's just saying, as an example, if you make $1,000 a month, then your mortgage payment couldn't be more than $420 a month to be able to demonstrate that you can keep up with this. If you make $2,000 a month, your mortgage payment couldn't be more than $840, and so on. The income eligibility is based on 150% of the area median income, which is actually pretty generous. So that means like a family of 4 would have to make, I believe it's something like less than $139,000. So 150% of area median income is a very generous threshold, and it isn't going to exclude all that many people. You have to own your property. It has to be your primary residence. It has to be in Illinois. And it has to be a 1 to 4 unit building. So if you live in a duplex, you own it, that would work up to a 4 unit building. A condo, a townhouse, a mobile home, those are all eligible. There's actually a longer list of this. If we have time, we'll get into, but here's the basics of what you need to be able to show. Proof of ownership, like a deed. You have to have proof of residency, that you don't just own the house, but that you live there. And that can be done through utility bills or a variety of other means. You have to be able to show an ID. And if your ID has a different address on it, you'll need to show an explanation, or like I said, a utility bill, something that shows you really do live in that property. You're going to have to show what your income is to show that income eligibility. And that's for every member that lives in the house, the full household. And so that can be done with pay stubs or with W-2s. And then you'll need a mortgage statement, unless, of course, you're applying just for the tax assistance because you don't have a mortgage. The final thing, big thing, is that you're going to need to be able to show either a letter from your servicer showing that you've explored these. Maybe it's turned you down for additional options. It says that you don't qualify for something. That actually will show that this program is a good fit for you. You could also have a document from a legal aid organization that you're working with showing that you've explored all of your options and that they're working with you, or an organization like the Neighbor Project. We have for this program specifically, we can issue a certificate saying that you've explored all of your options, that we've entered into, we've had a housing counseling session with you to explain what your options are. But you do need to have one of those things, because we need to fulfill the legislation that requires that this is a program that just isn't your first option, but is actually an option of last resort. So there is also a follow-up. So once you get this, you will get a call from us or the Illinois Housing Development Authority, making sure afterwards that things are still going okay. And if you're having challenges again, connect you with an organization like ours or somebody to help. And then here's just the main thing. If you have questions about this, IllinoisHousingHelp.org is there with a list of FAQs, eligibility requirements, really all the things I've talked about today you can find at this website, as well as access to legal aid organizations like the Neighbor Project. Those are all available. And it's also the place you'll go to apply for the program. So if you feel confident to apply on your own, you can start an application without an organization like ours, as long as you have a letter from your servicer showing that you've explored your options with them. If not, reach out to us and we'll be able to help. All right, so I know that was a lot pretty quickly there, but again, the main way to get in touch with us, and we serve, the entire Kane County, DuPage, Kendall County, Will County, DeKalb County area, a lot of the western sort of suburban area. Just call us. Sometimes you'll get a live person. Sometimes you'll need to leave a message. The demand for this has been high, but we will get back to you quickly, and we will find a way to get you in or get you access to help to apply for this. So call the Neighbor Project at 630-906-9400 or go to IllinoisHousingHelp.org. All right, I think that's it for me for the initial part. I'll pause there and see what questions may have come up while I was presenting.
Thank you so much, Rick. That was really helpful. So next, I wanted to go through some common questions that we've been hearing about the program. So even though it's not being administered by the federal government, we still have been hearing from constituents who want to know more. So I know you talked about this a little bit, but can you go over again, what the Homeowner Assistance Fund program funds can be used for? And then also specifically, if they can be used for, if someone is behind on a utility bill, can those funds be used to pay off delinquent utility bills?
Yeah, so really the best way to think about it are what are the things that are kind of part of your monthly housing payment, not necessarily all expenses, right? Because that list could go on. And so I'll talk about utilities in a second. But for many people, occasionally some of these things are paid separately, but for many people, you have one monthly housing payment. And that will oftentimes include your principal, your interest, your taxes, your insurance, and in some cases, your HOA, may be built into that as well. All of those things can be up. And depending on your situation, like I said, if you have a mobile home, there could be the lot rent that you pay, because that will also force you into losing your home if you fall behind on that. There are a variety of those things. But that's really what this is designed to cover. Utility assistance, I should point out that thanks to the American Rescue Plan, there is more utility assistance that is available. And I don't know if I mentioned this. This program, the ILHAF program, is available. You need to apply by May 31st. So this is kind of a big deadline. There is time. It's not necessarily if you are missing a document. I think we've indicated there's going to be some flexibility, but the big thing is to get in touch with us, get this going. I mentioned that May 31st deadline because that's also the deadline to apply for LIHEAP, for utility assistance. And if you go, actually, just the easiest thing to remember is if you go to IllinoisHousingHelp.org and you scroll down, they will have shortly after you see the information about the Homeowner Assistance Fund, you'll see information about the utility assistance and links to how you can apply for that. There is, as I mentioned, more money than has been available in recent history for utility assistance, but it is a separate application. you cannot get utility assistance through the Homeowner Assistance Fund.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So my next question is, can the program only pay for payments that are currently delinquent? So what if someone was delinquent during the pandemic, but maybe they've borrowed money from family or something to help pay them off in the short term? Is there any way they can utilize this program?
Yeah. So, I mean, for better or for worse, the main thing to remember is you have to be currently at least a month behind. And so if you have borrowed, and in many cases, I think that's a sign of responsibility, right? You've taken the positive steps, you borrowed from people in your family, and you've been able to kind of keep up and you're not behind, then unfortunately, you're not going to be eligible for this program because it's basically designed, as I said, to be a program of last resort. And so you have to be able to show that you're at least a month behind. Now, with respect to, if you've been able to kind of take advantage of things that your bank offers, that is going to depend on your situation. So if you have, as I mentioned kind of before, if you took advantage of it early on, a payment deferral or a forbearance option where you could pause your payments, if you've worked that out with your bank and you're now caught back up, then you're not going to meet that main eligibility criteria of being behind on your mortgage. However, if in the last 12 months, typically, you worked out a payment pause, a forbearance option with your bank, and you're still in that pause, then you do actually meet the terms of that because you are behind. You're not making your current payments, and that hasn't been resolved with your bank yet. You're basically back. And not only that, say that you did this 6 months ago and you haven't been making payments for the last 6 months because you couldn't keep up. This program can pay for all of those past 6 months, any debt that existed prior to that, so long as you haven't gotten, if you did take advantage of previous mortgage assistance that was offered in 2020, you're only going to be eligible for assistance for the year 2021 moving forward. But basically, if you're currently in a pause on payments, you do meet the eligibility, and this program can bring you all the way current.
Okay, great. That was my next question. So my next question now is going to be, how can someone prove that it was related to the pandemic? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. So fortunately, this is actually been made a little bit easier as this pandemic has been so long and stretched out over, at this point, 3 different tax years. It's become, I think, increasingly difficult to be able to reach back and show, well, this is how much I was making before, and this is how much I'm making now. Or really, the program's designed to help people who might have gotten behind just because they were laid off for a month. And it's been hard to catch up from that point. And so rather than having to show income prior to the pandemic, income after, because in many cases that doesn't actually show, maybe, like I said, increased cost because of childcare or something else. Mm-hmm. Really what you're going to need to do is there's actually a form in the application where you have to check yes or no. Were you negatively impacted? And then there'll be some boxes that you can check to say, this is how I was negatively impacted. And then it's going to have one of those kind of legalese things that says, I certify under penalty of perjury that this is the truth, and that kind of thing. And that's the way that you're going to prove that you were negatively impacted. But don't be too scared by that. There are so many ways that you might have been negatively impacted and I think for most people that's the case. It isn't for everyone, so you do have to still show that. But I wouldn't be too afraid that if your income stayed the same, but some of your costs went up because of childcare, like I said, or some other cost related to getting to your job, you lost your car or whatever. There are a variety of ways that you can demonstrate and just kind of sign that you have been negatively impacted.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And you mentioned the deadline before. Can you give everyone that date again? And then I was wondering, is it better for them to apply right away? Is there any benefit to getting the application in as soon as possible? Or as long as they get it in by the deadline, they'll all be reviewed at the same time?
So it's a little bit more complicated than that.
Okay.
But the short answer is it is better to get it in sooner rather than later. The deadline is May 31st. But the reason it's a little bit more complicated is the timeline ultimately is going to be dictated by your mortgage provider. Because what happens once you have got your application in is that the Illinois Housing Development Authority actually is going to contact your mortgage provider and offer the assistance to get you caught back up. But that mortgage provider, they have to accept it. And that can take long. You know, some places might turn that around quickly. They'll see, oh, great, this is going to get it caught up, and they'll answer it right away. But more often than not, these mortgage providers are taking 30, 60, sometimes longer days to review those and to sign off on accepting those funds. And as I said, in some cases, they may not accept it, either because it doesn't actually bring you fully, does you owe more than $30,000, or there's some other reason that they're not willing to kind of bring you current, because that is, again, part of the goal is they have to say, okay, we'll accept these, but we'll also abandon any current foreclosure proceedings or other actions they may have against you, because the goal is to keep you in your home. So depending on when you apply, it will help. I should say that as of yesterday, we had a call. There were 11,000 applications that had already been started in Illinois. As of yesterday, 4,000 of those had already been completed, and that was within the first 9 days of the program being online. And those 4,000, they said, had requested $85 million worth of assistance. And the program has over $300 million for just Illinois. And of course, not all of those necessarily will get that assistance, but it's definitely better to get it in sooner rather than later, given the demand for this program being so significant, as well as the fact that, your mortgage provider may take 30, 60, 90 days to review. And ultimately, we don't know that. So it's better to get that in and start that process as soon as possible. And it could also be that, some people apply on the last day and their mortgage provider turns it around real quick and somebody else is still waiting 90 days. So we encourage you to apply whenever, but sooner rather than later is definitely going to give you some benefit.
Okay, great. Thank you. And you kind of touched on this, that, it might depend on the mortgage provider, but what sort of timeline can people expect from when they do the application to when funds could potentially be distributed?
Yeah, I think that is essentially we're trying to tell people, don't expect it to happen in less than a 60-day time period. It's not super likely, because you're going to need to have both an Illinois Housing Development Authority state review to make sure that you qualify, that everything is there, that you meet all the requirements. And then once that happens, then they're reaching out to the mortgage provider, and then you've got that timeline to deal with as well. So IDA, the state, is going as quickly as they can, but then there's also another waiting period. So it's just not very likely that it's going to be quick. But the benefit is that, unlike with rental housing and evictions, the process for actually being quote unquote, I guess, evicted through a foreclosure action is much, much longer. And there's more time built into that. It's a little bit more involved. There's more at stake. And so, again, it just benefits everybody to get this in as soon as possible. And then you do have an ability to check on the status. And you will have an ability to sort of get your confirmation email and show that you've applied to this, whether it's to your mortgage provider or if you're in a foreclosure proceeding. Definitely suggest that you provide that to the judge as well, to show that you've applied and are waiting.
Great, thank you. And you mentioned the rental assistance program that previously had been run through the state. So if someone is watching this as a landlord or as a renter, is assistance still available for those people?
Yes. So the application for rental assistance is closed to the general public. However, what has changed is that the program is still available for anybody who's in an active eviction proceeding. So if you have had an eviction filed against you, or if you're a landlord that is taking tenants to court for being behind on their payments, basically the program exists exactly as it did before, but with one additional requirement, which is to show the court document showing that you're in an active eviction proceeding, and that will help you qualify for rental assistance funds. There are still some funds available, but as I said, only available to those who are in an active eviction. If you need help with that, you can also call the Neighbor Project. We have people available. We've helped. At this point, it's in the hundreds of folks that we've helped to be able to access those funds or complete their applications. And so we encourage you, regardless of which side you're on, the landlord side, and you haven't been paid for a long time, reach out to us. Or if you're a tenant that's falling behind and in court or at risk of going to court or received a notice, we can help with that as well.
Great, thank you. And Rick, can you talk about the Neighbor Project in terms of what area it serves, and if people are watching this and live in the 14th district but aren't serviced by the Neighbor Project, how they can find out who they can call for assistance?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, there are a number, I think 50 to 75 organizations like us throughout the state that have different areas that they cover. We're doing services virtually, so if this is the easiest thing for you, give us a call and we can try to help you with this application. Frankly, really wherever you are in the state. But typically we try to refer people to organizations within their area. And the easiest way, again, is to go to that ILLINOISHousingHelp.org. And if you get there, one of the things, once you just click through to there and you scroll, one of the main things is going to be a link to organizations within your area. And so there are great organizations like Consumer Credit Counseling Services that are located, like if you're a little bit further north, they're based out of McHenry County. I know the 14th district covers most of that county. So if you're there, or maybe far northern Kane County, Elgin, they have a satellite office there. It can oftentimes be helpful to be able to have access to somebody who's close to you, or maybe to be able to set up an in-person if this gets confusing. All of us are here for either virtual appointments or in-person. We do those by appointment only at this point, but most of us are offering both virtual and in-person. And if you go to ILLINOISHousingHelp.org, you can get access to a lot of other great organizations that are helping in different parts of the state. We're based in Aurora, and we kind of help the Kane, Kendall County area primarily, but we do pretty frequently serve residents of DuPage and Will County, as well as DeKalb County as well.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, that was my last question. Is there anything else about this program that you think would be important for people to know that we haven't got a chance to touch on today?
Yeah, one final thing. I think, again, refer people to Illinois Housing Help. You can get access to the income limits and all those things are there. But one thing that is a recent development, which is that the significant majority of mortgages that exist today are backed by either Fannie or Freddie Mac. And so in that case, one of the new developments is that there is a 60-day, I think moratorium is the term that's being used on foreclosures for those who are applying for this program. So if in fact you're in an existing foreclosure, and there's a way through ILLINOISHousingHelp.org, if you navigate through there, there's a website where you can check. It gives you instructions on how to check if your mortgage is in fact backed. Chances are, I mean, if you have an FHA loan, if there's a lot of ways to kind of know for sure, but chances are, again, the majority of mortgages are these days. And if you, chances are that you're going to be able to be eligible for this. The way in which it gets used is a little bit uncertain at this point, because this is a new development. But the main thing I would say is that, again, get your application in, because if you can show that you're applying for this program, you should be able to have more time in your foreclosure proceeding. And based on our experience, at least with the judges in Kane County, we know that they're very reluctant to sort of push through somebody being forced out of their home if in fact they're making efforts like this to apply for the funding that's out there. So they're likely going to give you some time as well, but you're going to want to show that you've started the process, and ideally that you've at least completed your application in order to take advantage of those things. But if you're in foreclosure, it is likely not too late, but we just encourage you to get started as soon as possible.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Rick. We really appreciate you being here today. And of course, all that you do at the Neighbor Project. Thank you to those who are watching or watch later. Don't forget that you can reach out to Congresswoman Underwood's office by visiting underwood.house.gov or calling us at 630-549-2190. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Jessica.